Yeah, 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 yeah. Look. Never switch on the homies in the day ones. They didn't wanna open doors, so we made some. Take a bow on these haters like I'm Trey Young. That direct deposit hitting like a bass drum. Incoming, coming, keep it incoming, coming, keep it incoming, keep it incoming.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm Elena here with Maeve and Jerry. How are you guys?
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing good.
How are you feeling after the Olympics? Maeve, are you still on high?
I wrote more than once that this was the greatest game I've ever seen from every possible angle. And just about anybody that I know among my hockey friends felt pretty much like that. What was interesting was that the Rangers played their first game after the Olympics, Thursday night at home, and the players were introduced when Trocheck and JT Miller were introduced, and the fans gave them a nice round of applause. Quinn, who was one of the assistants and had been a coach before, he got a nice round of applause. The coach did, but when they introduced Drury, he just got booed because even with him managing the team and how big a win was, he's reviled now for the team being so bad. And this was at the Garden with Ranger fans, and the gold medal was not strong enough emotionally for the fans to overcome their dislike for him for how bad the team is. So Ranger fans have taken a lot of abuse because of the team, personal, emotional abuse, but they did commend Miller, not that he was any great star in the Olympics, and Trocheck, who is one of the more favored players. And so my answer to you is that I have not come down from it, although I've got things now here in Israel that are more important. But the hockey was unreal to us, unreal. And I did a few columns about them. I didn't see anything from the Prime Minister of Canada commending the American team. I know he said something about commending the Canadian team. I wonder if he did do anything like that.
I haven't heard anything for him saying anything about the American team, but I personally speaking as a Canadian, I was happy for the Americans. They hadn't won since 1980, and they were a plucky group. They were just gave it their all, and it was, like I say, the level of hockey just amazed me. And to succeed at that level, the pinnacle of the game, and to come out on top, I felt very happy for Trocheck. I thought of all the players, he deserved it the most. I really did. I really like the way that he plays and how he carries himself. And, he's never a distraction. He's never, there's never any controversy surrounding him. He just shows up for work and gives it his all. And that's that, and that's the way hockey players should be.
Well, I read, I tried to avoid any of the controversy about, well, why did they play 3-on-3? Well, it was 3-on-3 for both teams, and we didn't vote on it. So I agree. I was stunned when I first found out that it was going to be 3-on-3, not just in that game, but that's the way it was. And that was in favor of the Canadians because they had the best skater if not the best all-around player, supposedly, in McDavid. And he had the puck before the winning goal was scored, and he blew it. So it was Justin Bourne, who was a good friend, and his dad, Bob Bourne, was my buddy when he was with the Islanders. He started getting into this if business. Well, if this guy did this or this guy did that, and if blah blah, and it was unequivocal. The Canadians had the better team. Well, if they had the better team, they did have the better team. It really did have the better team. If you go minus, they were minus in the win-loss. So, don't give me this business about, we had the better, and some other people, we were the better team. Well, you weren't the better team because the better team won the game. That's the whole point. Had the better goalie. They had on the winning goal. Where the hell was McDavid when it got into the other end? He lost the puck. That play going from him losing the puck onto the winning goal was magnificent. And of course the pass to Hughes. Great stuff.
We had McDavid and McCarr on the ice, and they both blew it, and so like I say,
the one thing I will say, and you probably will disagree, Jerry, the goaltending not only was better on the American side, but the first goal, that was a lousy goal on Binnington's part, whatever it was. He should have stopped that, but he didn't. Okay. But that's it. I don't think we have to go any further with this because we got more important things before us, and of course, the games are back. And Elena's very down on the Maple Leafs, and I think that the Panthers are not going to make it.
No, I watched the game the other day. It was a boring game. Both teams, Panthers and Maple Leafs, they're doing stupid things. I think they give up. There's no passion, there's no structure. It's just horrible. At this point, I think maybe they just gave up and they're trying to get to the bottom to get the first pick. But then we have Vancouver and Calgary competing with us for the first pick. They're at the bottom, right, Jerry?
Yeah, well, I've been watching a lot of Penn State hockey. You can get it on YouTube, and watching Gavin McKenna, and I am firmly believing he's going to be a bust. He's going to be another Lafreniere because he doesn't stand out. He doesn't, even in that level of hockey, college hockey, he's maybe the fourth or fifth best player on the ice. Like it's just like he does not stand out, and I don't think. If the Canucks do end up with the first overall pick, they pick somebody else because I can see it clear as day. Gavin McKenna is not going to be a star player in the NHL. He'll be a second or third liner at best.
Do you think he might get better? Bedard was criticized the first year he was playing.
Well, that's the problem with drafting 18-year-olds is sometimes that's as good as they're ever going to get. They might be a superstar at that level at that time, but that they're not going to get any better. There's no upside. That's the gamble. There's some people have how many times has a guy from the seventh round outperformed a guy from the first round, just because he had that much more upside. So that's always the danger of drafting 18-year-olds. But, there's a lot of good stud defensemen. This is a deep draft this year. And so I'm hoping the Canucks will pick a defenseman who can finally be that number one guy, that they've never had. Like Quinn Hughes was kind of that guy, but he wasn't physically overpowering. He just was good with the puck. And so they need somebody who can punish people and be the Scott Stevens type of defenseman. That's what they need. I thought Luc Bourdon was transitioning into that, and it was just such a tragedy that he died so young, when he was 21. So I thought he might have been that guy, but we need a Scott Stevens type. That's what we need.
I think it's very sad, and it's also inevitable, very sad that you talk about the teams not wanting to win. Not wanting to win to get to number one. Now, it's easy for people to write about it, but I can't see it. Just can't see it. The Rangers, one of those teams that the Rangers need help, obviously, and but who want to? You got 17, 18,000 people paying good money to see a hockey game, and I find it very, very disturbing. We used to call dumping. Very disturbing.
The most egregious example of that was when Pittsburgh tanked the season so they could draft Mario Lemieux. It was obvious because back then the last place team got the first pick. There was no lottery back then. So, now that's why they implemented the lottery system so that it would prevent teams from tanking. And, I think it's worked somewhat, but, I think there's still cases where teams are not putting out their best effort just so they can get a better draft pick. So, the system still needs to be tinkered with a little bit so they can, get rid of that where teams are trying to lose.
Anyhow, I was doing the Devils games when the Lemieux thing was unfolding.
There he is. Hey.
I did it.
Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us.
We're just talking about the year when Mario Lemieux was up for the draft, and it was between Pittsburgh and the New Jersey Devils. And Tommy McVie was coaching the Devils, and John McMullen owned the team, and he was very, very, very straightforward guy. And he said, I want my team to win every single game that it can win, no matter who's going to be available. And of course, they did win in terms of winning the games, and they'd lost because they didn't get Lemieux. And I think it was a disgrace at that time with the way the Penguins handled it, but it's ancient history. So I want to make sure that Bill knows that I have been reading it over, because a lot of funny things happened then. Anyhow, I want to ask you the first question, and that is, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little rural community in Manitoba, and I don't know whether how familiar you are with the province, but I grew up on a farm, a very small farm at the time, just outside of Brandon, Manitoba. It's about 30 miles away. So it was a very small rural farming community. It was made up of a bunch of small farms at that time. Things have changed back there since, of course, with consolidation. But that's where I grew up, and we had a little rink up in the town that I lived about 2 miles from, and that's where I started playing.
Okay. So that's Turk Broder's area, Brandon. At what point did you consider hockey as a profession? Not necessarily NHL, but when did it first say, when did it first come in, I want to get to the NHL, or I want to make be a pro?
Probably when I was, that's a difficult question, because I can say I wanted to be a hockey player when I was 5 years old, listening to the radio, because we didn't have a TV at the time. So this is 1952, 53, and in our rural community, we didn't have TVs yet. But I used to listen to my uncle on the radio, who was playing for the Detroit Red Wings at the time. This is in 1949, 50, 50, 51, 52, 50, in that era, right? Early 50s. So I used to listen to him on the radio, and I had pictures of him. I used to draw pictures of him and everything. And So I think that's where my love of the game began, and exposure to it was through him.
Where were you where were you in 1971 when the Islanders were entering the league, and what were you thinking about? Where were you playing, and what did you think about being picked by the Islanders?
At the time, I belonged to the LA Kings, and the previous year, I had spent a couple months in LA as an injury replacement. Gilles Marat had been injured, and I got called up to replace him. And then I was sent back to Springfield, and so I was LA Kings property. And because of the expansion coming up, teams were allowed to protect, I think, 15 players. So that didn't leave any of the cream of the crop on any of the current NHL teams, leaving any good players exposed. I don't want to be too hard on myself, but I was obviously 16 and beyond as far as the LA Kings considered their lineup. So I was left unprotected, and the Islanders drafted me, and that was it. I think I might have mentioned to you at another time, Stan, I found out about being drafted by them. I finished playing a round of golf, and I was in the 19th hole with guys I'd played with, and up on the TV came, the list of draftees by, the two teams that came into the league that year. Atlanta Flames were the other one. And there I was, having been drafted by the Islanders, and very pleasantly surprised, let me say.
Did you have an agent?
Yes, I did. Don Baisley. You remember
Very
Don?
famous.
Yes. Yeah. He just passed away a few years ago. I was one of his very first clients. He had the Swedes.
Yes.
The Swedes that played Hedberg and Nilsson, and the Sjöberg, the little general. Fran Huck was another one of his very first clients, and I was probably his fourth or fifth client. So he was representing me to the Winnipeg Jets, who had just come into the league, into the WHA. So he was representing me to them, and also after I was drafted by the Islanders, to them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether, I belong to the Jets in the World Hockey and to the Islanders in the NHL. And I don't know whether I had a choice as to where I would go, like if I would make either team. But I ended up choosing to go to New York to the Islanders because it was very attractive for me, having grown up with the NHL, and that being an aspiration for any Canadian kid or hockey player at the time to play in the NHL. WHA was still an unknown quantity. They got some credibility when Winnipeg drafted signed Bobby Hull at the time, and but still going to New York and going to the Big Apple, held a lot of appeal for me at the time. And I, during discussions and everything, I was talking to both teams. I decided I wanted to go to New York. It was that was it. And those were the reasons.
Was there any thought at all of playing in the WHA? Did you give that any consideration?
Oh yeah. As I mentioned, Don was talking to both the Winnipeg people and the Islanders at the time, and Winnipeg had not, I had not seen a contract on the table from them, but I did see one from the Islanders. Plus the fact that, as I said, I was living in Winnipeg at the time. I just finished, I played a couple of years with the Winnipeg Junior Jets in the Western Hockey League. And going to New York would be an adventure, right? As compared to just staying at home, same old place and everything. Going to the Big Apple was something. And in retrospect, who knows if it was the right decision? If I had stayed and played with the Winnipeg Jets, maybe I might have made the team. Maybe I might have had a better career. But I don't know. What I do know is I really enjoyed that here in New York. And I've mentioned previously that when I look back on it, I consider it one of the best years of my life. From a life experience perspective, from a hockey experience perspective, playing in the NHL was, other than the day in, day out losing, it was an experience. It was
What was
everything.
what was your experience like the first time you played against Bobby Orr? Did you?
Oh, I did. Yes. Yeah. I don't. He and I are the same age, but he'd been in the league, I think, like starting at 18. He'd already been in the league for 4 or 5 years, so he was an icon at the time. I don't remember anything special, versus him and anybody else. There were a lot of, to me, guys that were special that I had watched for years, right? And at that time, that 72, 73 year, if you check the Montreal Canadiens lineup, look at those guys, like what was it like playing against them? And, the Boston Bruins, the New York Rangers, Philadelphia, the Broad Street Bullies. So Orr was sort of, I held him in very high regard. I had as, like watching him those previous years, as everybody did. He was just unbelievable. But there were a lot of guys that were very good. And I was sort of I look back now too, and have previously, that I was probably too much in awe of the players, some of the players I was playing against. And I probably gave them too much respect as a player.
Were there players everyone respected, even if they were on the other bench?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And Orr would be one of them. Esposito, another one. Johnny Busick, Guy Lafleur. You can go on, the big 3D in Montreal at the time. Robinson, Savard, and Lapointe. I liked and respected all of them.
Well, I have to bring up this great story. And I'm sure you remember the game because you were playing in Boston Garden against the defending champion Bruins.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys scored 9 goals. You beat the Bruins 9-7.
Yeah.
Bill Torrey was the GM of the Islanders. He was at the game. And at the end of the game, he was walking down the steps and the 2 women were in front of him. And one woman says to the other woman, she says, I thought you said this was going to be a blowout. And Torrey leaned forward and says, lady, it was a blowout. You remember that game?
Oh, yes. But I didn't remember it until I think I read Greg's book, The Hapless Islanders, because I think he discusses it in there. And he also mentions there's a 5-minute video that Eddie Westfall did regarding that game. So I wasn't aware of that either, but I looked it up and watched it. And but I had completely forgotten about it. I don't think it had registered much at the time. Well, maybe it did at the time, but over the last 50 some years or whatever, I've forgotten a lot, let me tell you. And that was one of the things I'd forgotten. So it was good to be reminded of it. And I went back and looked at the game sheet from that game, and it turns out I was +1 in that game. And I wasn't plus in very many games that year, and neither were many of the guys. So it was a shock. And the comment I made on it before was I think that the Bruins were taking us too lightly, because I think we were 5-0 after the first period. And I don't know whether they'd all been out the night before. They were a partying group, that Bruins team, apparently. And so they probably weren't taking care of themselves, and they probably let's just throw our sticks on the ice and we get 2 points. And lo and behold, after the first period, it turned out it wasn't that easy. They made a comeback, and they almost, if the game had gone another 10 minutes, they probably would have won it. But fortunately, it ended after 60, so we were still leading on the scoreboard at that time.
Tell us about the game where nothing went as planned, if there was any.
I guess you could say every game, because every game we went into it planning to win it, regardless. And us going into Montreal to play the Habs in the Forum, we were, I think we were planning to try to keep the score close, not to be embarrassed and run out of the building, which happened a number of times. So did things go as planned? I think we planned to win more than we did. But I think we came a lot closer in a lot of games than we should have, and that was expected of us. Like for us to go into Montreal, like I said, them having 10 future Hall of Famers in their lineup versus our team, which was a bunch of, guys that were 16 or worse in the ranking on their own teams or were AHL players for their careers. For us to come within a couple goals, and I think we did that in a few cities, that was probably stuff that didn't go as planned, coming that close.
How did you feel about your next team, Washington? I remember a friend of mine did a story. Did you see the book that was written about the Capitals that year? It was a very funny book Glenn Dreyfus wrote.
Yeah. I've talked to Greg. I'm familiar with him, and I've read segments of the book.
There's a great story about where you guys won a game and you made it into the Stanley Cup. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the guys were carrying the trash can around. I think it was out. It was
the
out.
Stanley can.
It was out. California.
So what's your reaction days later about the American victory in the Olympics?
Well, I must say, I listened to you folks, your broadcast last week or this week. I think it was Monday night, Elena, that you did that.
We did it on Sunday, and I posted it Sunday night. Yes.
So you did it like it was fresh after the game.
Yeah, straight after the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I watched that whole segment, and I was quite interested in all your commentary and everything. And I'd watched the whole game. I don't know whether you know, but I was in Milan for the Olympics. We went to 3 games. I saw the Canadian men play Italy because tickets were a reasonable price, for that game. And I went not expecting to see a very good game, and I didn't see a very good game, but I went to see the personalities, the speed and skill of the Canadian team, watching McDavid and, the rest of the squad in person rather than, because I was watching it on, Elena, you'll be familiar with GEM, CBC's GEM.
Yep.
They were carrying the games. I had my PBN. Yeah, PBN, I think it's called, set to Canada. So I was able to get GEM and watch all the games. So I saw that game, and I also saw the Canadian women play 2 games. I saw them play the 5-0 game against the US in the round robin. That's the only ticket I bought ahead of time. I bought it in the summertime or last fall, when I knew I'd be going to Switzerland and Italy. And so I bought that ticket because I wanted to be sure I could get into that game. While I was there, I bought a ticket to the Canada-Finn game and went to watch it. And it turned out to be a blowout too. It was good for the first half of the game, but after that, it wasn't very good. The Italian game, was, France. Excuse me, it was France, not Italy. That was 10-2, I think, was the final score there. But I got out of the game what I expected. And, like the 2 of the games that I went to were in the Santa Giulia Arena, the big one, where there was a lot of controversy prior to the Olympics about it not being ready. When I first walked into it, I was expecting to see a dirty, scrubby old place or whatever, but I was taken aback by how good it looked. It really was an attractive building. And the only thing, unless you were looking for it and knew about the controversy about whether it was finished or not, the only thing that you could tell would be looking around, and it would be cosmetic kinds of things. But other than that, the arena looked great. There wasn't a bad seat in the place. And it was just a good experience just to be there. And I didn't care what the score was. And poor Canadian women, they got blown out in that one. And that was a one-sided game. But I was there. It was good.
In terms of fans, were there more Canadian fans or Americans?
For the French game, of course, there would be no Americans. It certainly seemed in that final game that the majority of the fans were Canadian, and they were getting the most applause or attention or whatever. Canadian-U.S. game, you always see the Americans at these events, and I've been to many hockey games, as you can guess, where Canada's playing the US through my daughter. And they are, whether they've got the numbers or not of the Canadian fans, they're a lot louder, raucous. You hear the chants, USA, USA, every game. So they make their presence felt, I think, more so than maybe the laid back Canadian group.
I'd like to go back to your junior career in 65, 66, 66, 67. You're playing in what was then like basically the Saskatchewan Junior League. You had two teammates, Juha Whiting and Bill Fairburn. Do you remember them from those days?
Oh, very well. Yeah. Especially, I haven't seen Bill since, nor Juha. And Juha passed away at an early age, as you may know, if you're familiar with his history. But about, I think 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was a fellow in Sweden who did a 3-hour, like it was in 1-hour segments. I'd encourage you to watch it too, if you can find it. But it was on the history of hockey in Sweden. And there was a segment in there about Juha. And the creator, producer of that documentary, Swedish hockey documentary, had called Brandon and talked to a sports writer there and asked him for some information on Juha. And the fellow there knew of me, and he referred the producer, the creator of this documentary, to me. So I talked to him here. At the time, coincidentally, my son was playing in Sweden, in the SHL, and I was in Luleå where he was playing in the SHL. Jens Lind was the producer's name. He lived in Stockholm, and he came up to Luleå and interviewed me. We talked on the phone a few times too before I'd gone there, but he came up, bought a cameraman, and we did an interview. So I've got a few seconds or segments in this Swedish hockey documentary talking about Juha Whiting. So yeah, I remember him very well from Brandon. I tried to get in touch with his wife, Susan, this past summer, because she owns, along with a couple of her sons, a resort in Clear Lake in Manitoba, in the national park there. But I wasn't able to get in touch with her, because I would have liked to have just talked to her and said hello. I didn't know her very well at all. And Juha played, Jerry, he played in LA. So I was at training camps, a couple of LA training camps with him. And he was a great guy. And it's unfortunate, what happened to him.
Bill Fairburn was a terrific Ranger in his own way.
Yes.
One of these underrateds, with playing on a line with Kachuk, worked the corners, just did all the gritty stuff, and he did it well. And he was a wonderful guy.
Yes, he was.
He was very, very well liked in that Ranger team.
Yeah.
And I felt that he never got the credit. Kachuk was supposedly the big hero, and he was a good player, very good player. But Billy was a great penalty killer, very good defensive forward. I loved him.
Yeah. We used to call him Mad Dog, was his nickname in junior, because he was a dog. He was like a mad dog. He could fight.
Clean. He was clean.
Oh yeah.
Not a dirty player. Not a dirty player.
Not at all. But guys wouldn't mess with him either. He was a strong guy. He was a great fighter. He was, I think I mentioned before, he was sort of Denny Potvin-like in that regard, that you could play any way you want. Nobody was going to mess with you. Right? Nobody messed with Denny Potvin. And same with Bill Fairburn, because he was one tough guy, but a great guy. He was our captain with the Wheat Kings at the time, Jerry, those 2 years. And, he was a great guy, very popular on the team, of course. We all followed him. He looked after us.
He was very serious. He was a serious, very serious, dedicated guy. They said that he was so serious that they would never invite him to a happy hour.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very understated. He wasn't a loud, outgoing guy, but he had a presence about him. You know, there's people like that they can walk into a room and you know they're there, and there's something about their character. I don't know what it is, but he had that sort of aura about him, I guess. Yeah, not a loud guy or whatever, but he had a sort of a, you know, he created a one-on-one relationship with people that was unique, I thought. But
He was with the Rangers when you were with the Islanders. Did you guys? You must have played against each other. Did you reconnect after the games?
No, but you know, we certainly acknowledge each other on the ice for sure. But no, not after the games, not socially at all. That's just not something we did. Fairburn and Tkachuk were in the same circumstance I was. Tkachuk played with the Kitchener Rangers. There was the Ranger, like a Rangers junior affiliate, the way it worked at the time. Stan, you would remember that. Jerry, you probably would too.
Yeah.
The Brandon Wheat Kings were an affiliate as well of the New York Rangers. So when I went to camp, Billy Fairburn, I think, had just spent his first or second year, his first year pro in Omaha in the Central League, and as did Juha. So I went to the Rangers camp after my 3 years in Brandon, and they were both at the camp as well. And you know, they had played pro, you know, the 1 year in Omaha, and I don't know whether they cracked the Rangers that next year or not, but it would have been shortly afterwards, if not that year. But so they were never drafted. Neither was I, because we just belonged to the New York Rangers. And that after my third year, the Rangers invited me, but my third year with Wheat Kings, and supposedly my last year junior, the Rangers invited me to training camp. And I went, and they weren't going to turn me pro. I wasn't going to go, or stay to play in New Haven in the Eastern League. I just didn't want to go there. I'd heard about the Eastern League, and it was a place for animals, and I wasn't, there are a lot of them anyway, and I wasn't going to go there and have any part of it. I went to the camp from the dorm at the University of Manitoba, because after my 3 years in Brandon, I was thinking I was retired. I wasn't going to play anymore. So my sister had suggested I should go into the University of Manitoba, where she was going, and take business admin, which I did. So I went to the Rangers camp from the dorm at the University of Manitoba, left all my stuff there, and when camp was over, I came back to the dorm, and I was done. I was retired. That was it for me. Because they weren't going to turn me pro. Like, they weren't going to, the teams they had at the time, I think it was Omaha in the Central League, and they had Buffalo in the American League. And they might have had an affiliation with the team in the Western League, but anyway, they weren't going to turn me pro. So I went to Emil, the cat, when, you know, they told me what they were going to do with me. And I said, I'm going home. I said, you're not going to turn me pro. I'm heading back to school. And he was upset with me and let me know. He said, why did you come here? And I said, I came here to turn pro. I'm not turning pro. I'm going home. So I went back to the dorm and started my year in business in commerce at University of Manitoba. And I was done until Eddie Dorohoy started chasing me. My old coach with the Wheat Kings, Jerry, you might remember Eddie. Talk about characters. There was a character. And there'd been a trade between Brandon, my old team, and the Winnipeg Junior Jets. The fellow who was supposed to report to Winnipeg did not. He was a defenseman. So what Eddie wanted to do was to put me in his place in that trade. And I said, no, thanks. I'm retired. You know, I'm not a hockey player. Let's face it. But I'm moving on. School is it now, and I'll graduate and go get a job. But he kept phoning me, and I had no money at the time. I was low on cash. And Ben Haskins, who was the owner of the Jets at the time, gave me some money. So what was I going to do? So I ended up, signing with them and played 2 years with the junior Jets. Had a great time. It was fun. Used to go to all the games from the dorm. The first year I was in the dorm. What I remember best about that is all the guys in the dorm on a Friday night would all be, buying their liquor and everything and getting ready to party. We had big parties in our alley those days. And there I am jumping in my jalopy heading off to the Winnipeg Arena to play hockey, missing all the fun.
You're a hockey parent.
Game, and they were all a mess, every one of them. But fun times.
Bill, what was the key? I have a 17-year-old granddaughter who's a very good hockey player. She's finishing her 3rd year in Indiana. So what's the key to being the ideal hockey parent? I'm a hockey grandparent. I'm not the parent, but what's the key?
I'm a hockey grandparent now too. I've got Megan's son and daughter they're 6 and 10 now. They're both hockey players as well. So I'm now a hockey grandparent, and I'm trying to stay away, as much as I can. You're always tempted to get in and think you know something, and I probably should butt out of it. And they're both Megan and her husband, who is a professional goalie as well, are very capable of managing the careers of their children. So I should just butt out, I think. But anyway.
What positions are they playing, your grandkids?
One is a defenseman, so that's appropriate, as Megan and my son and myself have been. And my daughter, she's like 6 years old. She's not really, she's playing with a development group or whatever, and they don't really have positions. They just go out and play. So, but he's, their son, my grandson, is he's getting a little serious about it. He's a fairly good player too. Back to your question, Stan. What advice? Like what counsel is that? Was that the question?
What makes a good hockey parent a good hockey parent? So you get emotionally involved if you have a kid who's playing and you want to do well, or her to do well, certainly.
Yeah, for us, I'll speak for my wife and I. What we did was we involved our kids in every sport we could, because I think it's good to be well-rounded, and I think you've got skills that you learn in one sport that translate to other ones that you don't get from that sport specifically. And so we had them all play all the sports, and they made the decisions on what they did, what sports they wanted to play, which ones they wanted to concentrate on, which ones, and they both, Megan and Brendan, both gravitated to hockey. And I think kids gravitate to things they're good at. They're just like adults, right? We like doing stuff we're good at because we get good results and it makes us feel good. And I think kids are the same way. And both Megan and Brendan were good hockey players as little kids, and they wanted to keep playing. And, I always heard at the time too that, your kids should take a break over the summer and everything, but the kids didn't want to take a break because they could play on the summer, spring, or traveling teams or whatever. And, coaches wanted them to play, and they wanted to play. So I wasn't going to say, no, you can't. You got to go and play baseball. You got to go do this. I let them make the decisions on what they wanted to do. And when it's their choice, I think they put more into it. It's their, like, if your parent is making you do something, you don't want to do it. And I think some kids will just rebel, like in spite of you. But when it's their choice, they have a personal commitment to it. And they have that commitment because they're having fun at it, they're enjoying it, and they're good at it. So I think, Stan, that's probably the big thing. Does that answer your question, or it's my opinion?
It does. And of course, having grown up where we didn't have much ice in Brooklyn, there was no concern about being an ice hockey player. We did have good roller hockey, but my granddaughter is good academically, and we're trying to figure out where she might wind up in her high school.
Yeah, I mentioned you, or I heard you mentioning on your Sunday broadcast that she's got an offer already, a scholarship offer already. We won't repeat the name of the school, but I would suggest, seeing that she's a junior at Culver, and I've seen her play, like videos of her and everything, that she's going to have a lot of schools chasing her. I think she's an up and comer. I think you might have a star in your hands. And I think maybe not by 2030, but 34, we might see her in a U.S. Olympic uniform. If she keeps progressing at the rate she is, I thought she was exceptional. You know what I've seen.
Your daughter is now a television star, am I right?
She'd like to be more of a television star. Maybe she's a radio star to some degree, but yeah, she's doing color for Flames broadcast on Sportsnet 960, The Flame, out of Calgary here. Right today, she's in LA. They did San Jose, the game in San Jose on Thursday evening. Tonight they're in LA, and tomorrow they're in Anaheim. So she does the color commentary along with Derek Wills, who's the play-by-play guy. So they're a team, and they travel with the team. And I for all their games, I put the game up on the TV, mute the sound on the TV, and listen to her and Willsy on the play-by-play on the streaming 960. So I'm still an Islander fan, number one.
Good for you.
But I know the Calgary Flames better than any team in the league, as you can imagine, because I watch every single one of their games. It's rare when I miss a game.
Your daughter Megan won 2 gold medals, 2010 in Vancouver, 2014. Were you able to witness both those?
I witnessed. We were at the games in Vancouver. We did not go to Sochi in Russia because we were, a little skeptical about going to Russia. In hindsight, I kind of wish we had, but we did go to Seoul, Korea, or Pyeongchang for the 2018 Olympics. So we did witness those games. We saw and talk about, what we just witnessed. That game, the gold medal game in Korea in 2018, it also went to an overtime, and we lost that game in a shootout. Like it went beyond. It was a 5-minute, 5-on-5, or was it 10? 5 or 10 minute overtime, and I think it was 5-on-5, which is another subject. But then it went to a shootout. So you can debate we debated about 3-on-3s. That debate's still going on, because of these recent Olympics. At the time, going to a shootout is even worse. That's how it was decided.
They should get rid of shootouts.
Oh yeah. And you could argue the 3-on-3 thing too, that you're not using your team and the structure and your total lineup, but that's for another day. But anyway, yeah, it went to a shootout, and those two teams in that 2018 were very closely matched. So it was appropriate it went to an overtime. The Lamoureux sisters were on that U.S. team at the time, and they were both very good. Hillary Knight, I think that might have been, I don't know if she was there or not. Megan Duggan. There was a bunch of girls on that team that Megan had played with at the University of Wisconsin when she was there. So she was playing against a bunch of her buddies from
Johnson, the coach in Wisconsin. Mark Johnson.
Yeah, he was the coach when she was there. Yeah. Scored. Yeah, he was on that 1980 Miracle on Ice team.
Right.
He was instrumental in Megan having a successful hockey career. He made a decision after her second year. She played her first 2 years of university at Wisconsin as a forward. And I don't know whether he was short on the blue line for the next year or two, but he moved her back to defense for the start of her junior year. And she blossomed there on the blue line. She just did fantastic. Her third and fourth year, Wisconsin won the NCAA Division I championships. In her second year, she was All-American at Wisconsin. So Yeah, and that's where and from there that was sort of a stepping stone to her making the Canadian team as a defenseman. I don't think she would have made it, although she'd been to under 22 camps and for the younger girls that hadn't made the national team yet as a forward. So she was doing well as a forward, no question. But I think playing defense sort of put her over the top when it came to her career.
Bill, what impresses you most about today's athletes?
Today's athletes? Oh, they're just. I look back on myself and my fellow hockey players at the time. The skill and the conditioning, everything about the game is so much better today, and so are the players as a result of that. Diet, nutrition, training, like they train year round. Both Megan and Brendan, my kids, they were training and perfecting their talents and skills over a 12-month period. When I played, when the season was over, we all went home, we golfed all summer, drank beer all summer or whatever, and then you go to training camp to get in shape, right? Stan, you're very familiar with that, I'm sure. And but today, exhibition games start the second day of training camp. So you got to go to camp ready to play in total condition. And of course, I think the players today live cleaner lives. They're not as, I think, I don't know the right way to phrase it, but they live better. They're more conscientious of their lifestyles, their diet, nutrition, strength, conditioning, all those things. And in addition to that, the equipment they use is so much better. The hockey sticks, I could show you the hockey stick I use and you wouldn't believe what it looks like compared to the current technology. Same with skates, same with all the equipment. You've got all this protection and yet it weighs nothing. Our equipment after, the leather stuff after playing a game and whatever, it'd be all sweaty and everything, and it weighed twice as much as it did when you started the game, right? So everything about the game is so much better, and as a result, so are the players. The players, I think, today are just magnificent. And I can compare my generation of players to those of that of my uncle, Jim McFadden, who played in the late 40s, early 50s. And the size of the players, that's the biggest difference. My uncle was 5'7" or 5'8", and he was probably the average size for his generation in the 50s. For me, it was, the guys, at 6 feet, I was one of the bigger guys. Pat Quinn, Moose Vasco, these guys were only 6'2", right? 6'3", and yet they were giants in the NHL at the time. They were big guys, right? Moose Vasco, give me a break. Zdeno Chara. Now there's a big guy. And there's a bunch of big guys like that. But those were our big guys of our era. And you look at them today, a while ago, I did the average height and weight of teams that I played on. And also I had a program from a game we played against the Detroit Red Wings and that had their heights and weights for their players. And I think the average height on the Detroit Red Wings this would be in, early 70s would have been, sort of 5'10", 180, something like that. Whereas players today, and I think they've gotten a little bit smaller, but, when my son played, the average height was, I think, 6'1.5" and, 205, something like that. So you can imagine, putting one of those teams up against, one of the teams of my era, up against one of the teams of my uncle's era in the 50s, you can just imagine what one of those teams today would do to us. It would be awful.
I mean, the goalies are like 6'6", 6'7", with all the equipment. They can just fit in the net and not move, just stand there.
Yeah. There's a great picture. If you want to see, it's Terry Sawchuk. There's a picture of him standing in the net, like looking at him from the front. And you can see so much net around him. And he looks so skinny because he's got those skinny little leather pads and the skinny little gloves and everything. And he's standing there. And you can see so much net. But when you look, like you say, goalies today are 6'5", 6'6". My son-in-law, Scott, he's 6'4" to 6'5", 220. He was a goalie. He played some in the American League, but he's sort of the prototype of today's goalies. But if you took that same picture of, substituted one of these guys in to that picture of Terry Sawchuk, and you should look up that picture because it's hard to believe. You could see, what the difference is. You can't see any net. You just, they fill it.
Okay, we're running out of time. Maeve, do you have a joke for us today?
I'd like to link my humor with the topic we've been discussing. And you're talking about the summers, you guys golfed and drank beer. Well, there was a reporter in New York named Sandy Padway, and at the end of the Rangers season, he was interviewing players on what they did in the off season. And Bob Plager was then the Ranger defenseman, and he was a real funny guy. And Padway said, "What do you do in the off season?" He says, "Well, I'm a beer taster for the Ontario Liquor Commission." He said, "A beer taster? What do you do as a beer taster?" He says, "Well, I get on the truck and I open up a 6-pack. I open one can out of every 6-pack and I taste it to see that it's okay." And so Sandy Padway writes this story like there is such a thing as a beer taster. It was a complete joke.
Oh, yeah.
It ran in every paper across Canada that this guy is a beer taster. Of course, it was a farce. It was a farce, and of course, they had to do some sort of reaction. But Bob Plager did like his beer.
Oh, yeah. A lot of players did in that era.
I
Yeah,
need a
very
beer
good.
now. I need that beer now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We all need that beer now.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
Good
Good seeing all you guys, too.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to everyone watching and listening. And thank you for being part of Bottle Rocket community. And we'll see you next time.
I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.